Hello everyone, I hope you're all fine. Sorry if I took my time for this tutorial, but I just finished rendering my new project. His name is Dion and he's eating all my nights. He's my third kid, so I'm kinda busy. Anyway, today I'm going to show you how I created this car animation in Blender. It will be a full tutorial and beginner friendly. In this video, you will learn object import, car animation with launch control, camera animation, lighting, environment setup, particles, smoke simulation, render settings, and composition in DaVinci Resolve. As always, it's going to be fun and rewarding, so let's dive in just after this quick shout out. The right is my Blender car animation course created for beginners and intermediate users who want to get into car animation. Now you get 85 videos and 13 hours of training. And of course, everything is included. The cars, the assets, the add-ons, everything you need to follow along. You will also get my personal help on a private channel on Discord in case you're stuck or you need advice. In Blender, first let's import the car. And for this animation, I'm so excited to introduce you my new car created by the talented Alkisdum24. You will find the link of this car in the description. It's a professional car, absolutely gorgeous and already rigged, so ready for animation. As usual, I'm proposing this car at a special price for the Blender community. So if you always wanted to have a new car or you simply want to support my channel, that would be a great way to do so. Another option is to simply download my C63 AMG entirely free. The link will be in the description as well. To keep things organized, let's create a new collection for the car. So right click, a new collection, double click, and I will name it car. Now we can delete the default cube. You select the collection, you go in File, Append, you search for your car, append again, you go in Object, you press A to select everything and append. Great, now you have your car in your scene. For this animation, we are not going to use this rig, but launch control instead, and I will explain to you why. So to delete this rig, you select it and you press delete on your keyboard. And here, you do the same with all the WGT objects. So you select everything, shift and click, and delete again. Okay, now why do I want to use launch control for this project instead of the Rigger Car add-on? The main reason is launch control will calculate and animate all the physics for us automatically, the suspensions, the roll, the pitch, etc. And for this animation, I want plenty of bumps on the ground because we are going off-road. We could use the Rigger Car add-on, and the issue would be that we would have to animate everything manually. So it would require hours of animation and it would not be very accurate. Where with the launch control, it's just a matter of clicking on one button. And you will better see that when we will start the car animation. And by the way, I will put the link of this launch control add-on in the description. But if you don't have it, you can still use Rigger Car. I have plenty of videos on my channel to explain how to use it. It should not stop you following this tutorial. To install launch control on this car, you click on launch control, local. And for the collection, you select the car, the collection where you have your car. And because we have everything named correctly, you just click on rig vehicle. If you don't have the correct names, here they are. So now I click on rig vehicle and boom, everything is ready and I already have a cool animation. For this project, I want the car to drive on a straight line. So I click on select animation and I will select straight 01. And here you click on animate vehicle. Perfect, but the animation is a bit short. So let's make the straight line longer. So you click on this path and you go in edit mode by pressing tab or here. Here you click on item and you select this last point here. You will have a value around -50, but we want something like -294. Great, so now we have a path that is 294 meters long. You can go for 300, it doesn't really matter. And because we update the path, we need to update launch control as well. So I click on launch control and here I click on update driving path. We want a pretty long animation. So before I forget, let's change the animation to 300 frames. Okay, good. Now let's take care of the ground. So Shift A, Mesh and Plane. For the dimensions, let's go for 12 meters on 12 meters. You press Tab to go in Edit mode, right click, Subdivide, And here for the number of cuts, let's go for 40. And why do we subdivide this plane? Well, the goal is to create bumps in a few seconds, and we can't do that if we only got one plane. Now we have plenty of little planes to raise in order to simulate the bumps. So let's go back in object mode. We are going to extend this road with an array modifier. So here you click on modifiers, add modifier, and you search for array. We don't want to extend on X, so 0 here, but we want to extend on -y. So here -y, so -1 here. And for the count number, let's go for 50. And I want a little bit of offset, and I will explain why in a few seconds. So I will go in wireframe mode, Z and wireframe, or you just click here. And we want the repetition to overlap with each other. So here I will take constant offset, and I don't want the X, but I want the Y. So here, look at this. If I raise it, there is a separation between the planes. But if I do that, now there is an overlap between the planes. So that's exactly what we want. Let's go for 115 just to be sure that there is an overlapping. And now we can remesh everything because we don't want this overlap to stay. So add modifier, and here you search for remesh. Okay, remesh. And now we have a clean distributed road. We can apply everything. So here apply and here apply. Now we can go back in solid mode. So Z solid. And we did that because we don't want to see any obvious separation between the planes, because this is exactly what I did in my initial project. You can see that here, here, and here. Everywhere you can see the separation between the planes. So this way we will have a clean road. And now we can replace the launch control ground with our ground. So I will delete this ground. So you select it and press delete on your keyboard. You select our ground. Let's name it road. You press M on your keyboard, and we will move it to launch control and ground detection. Okay, now my car is sitting on the ground. That's great, but I don't see why the ground is so high. So let's put it at 0. Yes. Okay, and when I do that, I see that there is an issue with my wheels. There is an inclination that I don't want. And to fix that, you click on the rig, on launch control rig, and you go in pause mode here, and you press this camber amount, you press G, and you lower it to 0. So now we have the wheels correctly aligned. Great, now our car is moving on the ground, but we still got an issue. Look at this. The car is stopping here instead of going to the end of our path. And to fix that, let's go in frame 1. You click on the rig and you go back in pause mode if it's not already the case, and you select this wheel. You will have keyframes here, and this is how the car is moving in launch control. The car is following the rotation of this wheel, and what we are going to do is to tell launch control that we don't want to stop at frame 153. So let's go at frame 300, and we are going to change the rotation to 1638, and you press I on your keyboard to update the keyframe. So this way now, if I press play, and now our car is driving until the end of the path. And just to check the realism of the scene, let's check the speed of the car. So you select the rig, you go on the launch control, and here you can click on speedometer. Let me just be here, spacebar, and we can see the speed here, and we are around 100 km per hour. That's pretty realistic to me. Now we can move on to creating the bumps on the road. Okay, we already prepared the ground with the subdivisions. So now we can go in sculpt mode. So here you go in sculpt mode with the ground selected, and you select this brush, the draw one. And I will change the radius to something smaller, like 25. We can leave the strength to 0.5. And you can start to draw bumps on the road. So here you can see the bump. Let me do it again. My advice is when you start, you should really do small bumps like this. And before I forget, let's go back in object mode and right click on the ground and shade smooth. So now we have cool bumps. Let's do that again. Let's add some more bumps. So maybe I will draw a line here. And if you create bumps that are too big, when we will start the physics with the launch control, the car will jump too high. So try to do really small bumps. When you do that, if you don't like a bump, okay, you can use this tool, this brush, the flatten one. You can remove the bumps like this. I will come back in a few seconds after I've created some bumps. And there is no rule, it's really up to you how many bumps you want to create. Okay, yeah, so I created a few bumps, and before we see how launch control will help us with this animation, let's set up a camera to follow the car so we can see the result. So I will move somewhere behind the car, maybe here, and you press on your keyboard Ctrl-Alt-0 to frame the camera with the same view. Then you click on the camera and you go back on the viewport with your mouse. Let me frame it a little bit better, maybe something like that. And with the cursor on the viewport, you press I on your keyboard. Be sure to have the camera selected. That will insert a keyframe for the camera. And let's do the same for frame 300. I will move behind my car, somewhere around here. And Ctrl-Alt-0. Let me reframe that. You select the camera again and you press I on your keyboard to insert a new keyframe. So let's see the result. Go to frame 1 and I press spacebar. Okay, it's following correctly. Okay, here we have an issue. So let's fix that. You just move the camera. So with the camera selected, I will go in item and I will change the Y position, maybe something here. And you press I again to insert a new keyframe. Let's see the result. Okay, here I got an issue. So let's do the same. Okay, and maybe here. Let's do it one more time. I press I again. Okay, at the end, you should have something like that. All I want is to have the camera behind the car to see the animation. Okay, the camera setup is good. And we can see that the car is reacting to the ground, to the bumps, but the animation is not really good. And this is typically what we would have if we used the Rigger Car add-on. Now let's see the power of launch control. So here you click on launch control, enable physics. You can select the type of car for the suspensions and stuff like that. And you will see here the values changing. I will go for a rally car. Now let's see the result. I go back to frame 25, which is our frame number 1. The physics are live. You can just bake them when you want to render. Okay, so let's see the physics of rally car. Press play. And boom, now the animation looks really good. And if you want, you can play with those values to get exactly the style you're looking for. I have some issues with some bumps because they are a little bit too high and my car is jumping a little bit too high. So I have to fix that and to lower the bumps. So let me work on the bumps and I retrieve you in a few seconds. Okay, this is my final ground. I think with this bumps creation process, you should really start with tiny bumps and you add increasingly until you're happy because we don't want the car to jump too high. So let's see the results now with my final bumps. Cool, I really like the animations, the suspensions, and everything is automatic. Once again, you could do that with a Rigger Car, but you will have to do that manually for each bumps. So you will spend hours, and I'm not sure of the results because here the bumps, the suspensions are calculated automatically by the add-on. So it looks really good. Okay, great. Just like that, we have finished the car animation. Now we can focus on the camera animation. Let's start by defining our resolution. So you click on output and here I want a resolution of 1920 by 817 because we want a cinematic ratio and 24 FPS of course. We need to create a focus point for our camera. So Shift A, empty, plane axis. Let's name it focus. I press 7 to go in the top view and I will move this focus point behind the car because we are filming from behind. And to attach it to the car, you select the focus point, then shift click on the car and Control P and object transform to parent it to the car. So now the focus point is following the car. Let's define our camera settings. So you click on camera and here you click on this camera icon. I would like to feel the sensation of speed, so we can use 35mm for the focal length. Here we activate the depth of field, and here for the focus object, let's search for the focus we have created. So focus, f-stop to 1 to have a blurry background, and blades to 5. Okay, that's it for the camera settings. Let's reorganize our workspace to include the camera view. So you move your cursor until you have this little crosshair, and you drag it here, and you do the same one more time this way. And on this window you can press 0 on your numpad to go in the camera view, and here I want a clean view, so you press T to hide those tools, and let me drag it a little bit more, and you press those icons to hide the different tools, so we only have the camera view with no distraction. On this window you can go for the shader editor, for example, and then we click on camera and we delete all the keyframes that we have created so far. We don't need them anymore. And here, if you want to adjust the size of the camera view, you can press N and you untick camera to view. In the view tab you untick camera to view, and then you come back. Then you press Control and middle mouse button up or down to change the size of the window until you have something you like. And then we come back here and we click again camera to view, because we want to use it to reframe our camera framing. Okay, because we are going to work a lot on this camera view, let's raise the window for now. So here, and I want to go somewhere behind the car. Let me find a sweet spot. Okay, so this is where I decided to place my camera for the first frame. And here are the exact positions of the locations and rotations. The general idea is to follow the car from behind and to include camera movements from left to right, and sometimes you can get closer to the car. We want some variations to keep things interesting for the eye, so you don't have to do exactly like me. You can do your own thing, but as a reference, here are my camera and path positions that I have decided to use for this animation. Here is the location of the path. Now for the camera keyframes, for the first frame I have this framing, and this is the position and rotation. Then I decided to add a keyframe at frame 79, and here are the values. Then 122 with those values, 163, I went a little bit on the right with those values, and then 197, 255, and finally position 300, and here are the values. So far here is the result for the camera animation. It looks already pretty cool, but of course we are going to improve it. And one thing I want to change right now is I don't really like the animation of my car when I use this rally car physics, and I want to change it to road car because I want more suspensions and more animations for my cars. So let's see. Yes, I prefer that already, because now there are a lot more suspensions and more animation. Here you can see the car is jumping very high, and I really like that. And why do I like that? It's because I know that we are going to add the snow and all the effects, so I really want the car to move around, and I don't want subtle movements. I really want like not anime movements, but yeah, I really want the car to jump around. Okay, so we change it to a road car. And for the camera animation, before we add some shakiness, let's smooth everything. I like always to do that. So here I will go in the graph editor, and you select all the keyframes, and we are going to add automatic keyframes before the smoothing. So key and density, and here bake keyframes. So now we have all those blue keyframes created for us, and what we want to do now, we want to smooth everything. Let me go around here just to see the result, and all the keyframes are selected. You come here, key, and then to smooth everything you go in smooth and smooth legacy. Press one time, and you want to repeat this process again and again and again until you're happy. But if you want, you can just assign a shortcut to this smooth legacy. So right click, you press assign shortcut, and you select the shortcut you want to use. Me personally, I'm using Alt and O. So I will do that. So I select everything, and here on this window, Alt and O. Here you can see my car is moving a little bit because it's smoothing the transition between all the keyframes. And let's go for around 50, see the result. And now we have a smooth camera animation. And what we want to do now is to add some shakiness to everything. And to do that, we are going to use the Shakify add-on. The link of this add-on will be in the description. This is an add-on created by Jan Huber and it's free for the community. So thanks to Jan. And to install this add-on, it's like usual. You will go in Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you click on this little icon, Install from Disk. You search for the add-on and just press Install from Disk. Then you will have the add-on in your camera settings like me. Okay, now for the shakiness, you click on this little plus icon and it will add the first layer of shakiness. This one is called Investigation. If we press spacebar, already you see the camera is moving around and this is what we want, some organic movements. But I like to use different layers, so let's add another one. And for this one, I don't want another investigation. So let's change it to out car window here. Okay, let's add another one. And this time we select a Handycam run. But now if you check the result, maybe it's a little bit too intense. It's okay. I mean, it depends what you're looking for, but for me it was a little bit too much. So I'm going to reduce the influence of this Handycam run and let's go for 0.4. And then we add a last one. And this one I want bike and gravel. Okay, and this one is very extreme, as you can see. So let's change the influence and I will go for 0.06. Okay, cool. So now we have a very organic movement. It's like we are following the car from another car and it's normal to have all those shakiness happening. If you want to add another layer, maybe you want to remove a layer, it's really up to you. But for me, I like this kind of animation when I am filming from behind, and particularly when we are doing an off-road animation. Great, I'm pretty happy with this camera animation. Now we can take care of the environment and the light. For the light, it's simple. In 99% of my projects, I use the same HDRI pack. The SceneSkies HDRI. For me, those are the best HDRI out there. Beautiful, easy to use, and they are only the skies and distant mountains, so it's easy to integrate in your scene. If you want a free alternative, you can use HDRI from polyheaven.com. You will have plenty of choices to follow along. If you're using the SceneSkies HDRI, you just click here on World and you will have this SceneSkies add-on. You click on List Installed Collection. I click on this image to see my choices. I also have choices here on the Roth Northern Forest, but I will choose a collection from there. So I click on the image and I selected this one. I like this HDRI because of the sky, the mountains, and the light it provides for my scene. I click here, Set Sky, then I go in Render Mode. And just like that, we are done with the light. And as I told you, look at this, the beautiful sky, the mountains, and the lights on the car is very good. And now for the road texture and environment, I don't know if you checked my previous video, but we are going to grab 18,000 professional assets for free and for ourselves forever. The story behind this is Epic Games has decided to move all its assets to a new marketplace called fab.com. So all the content from the Unreal Marketplace, Sketchfab, ArtStation, and Quixel Megascans will move to Fab. And until the end of 2024, all Megascans are free to everyone and to all engines and tools. So yeah, you need to grab them right now. And luckily for us, it's pretty easy to do. So you go on fab.com and here you will have one of the most beautiful buttons in the world, the Claim Now button to grab everything. So you click on it, you sign in with your Epic Games account or you create one, it's free. Then you should have a button to grab it all. I already did mine, so I don't have the button anymore. And that's it, the 18,000 assets are yours forever. So now to download an asset, you go here on Go to Quixel Profile and you can take everything you want. It's all you can eat time. For our project, we need a snow material. So in the Quixel library, you type snow and we can filter by material and textures. And we could use these snowmobile tracks. So you click on it. Here it confirms that you own this item. That's cool. And here we have an important information. We can see that the normal size is 2x2. We will need that later. You click on download. 2K is enough. When you extract the zip, you should have access to those files. In Blender, let's activate the Node Wrangler add-on. So you click on edit, preferences, add-ons, you search for Wrangler, and you activate this add-on. Now we can click on our road. We go in shading. We press new to create a new material for the road. And normally from there, we would have to connect those images manually to texture the road. But luckily for us, we have Node Wrangler activated. So you click on the principal BSDF here and Ctrl, Shift, and T. You look for the files we have just downloaded. And for this case, we need the base color, normal, roughness, and transmission. You click here to validate, and voila. Everything is set up for us automatically by Node Wrangler. Let's see the result, Z, and we go in material preview mode. Okay, great, we have our texture applied. Obviously, we have some scaling issues, but first, let's rename this texture Road 1, and you will understand why in a few seconds. And before we adjust the scaling, let's create a reference. So Shift A, Mesh and Plane. Let's move this plane. And if we check the size of this plane here in item, we can see that it's 2 by 2. And if you remember, that was the size needed for this material. So here we will have a good reference if we apply the material on this plane. So let's look at for the road 1. So road 1. So this is our reference. This is how our material is supposed to look at a good scaling. And here, if we change the scaling of this road, it will also change the scaling of this material. So we will have to create a unique version for our road. So here, let's duplicate this new material. Okay, and let's name it main road, for example, or whatever you like. And now we can play with the scaling, and let's do that with the X. So X here, and you scale it until you have something like looks like the reference. And if you take here the reference, we can see that it's pretty much it. It's good enough for me for the X. Now let's take care of the Y. For the Y, we can see those little dots, and here those dots are pretty ugly. So let's change that. Let's raise the Y until we have the same dots, roughly the same dots. So yeah, maybe something like that. Yes, it looks like the same. Okay, so that's good enough for me. We have fixed the scaling issue of our road. And don't worry about the repetition. We don't really care because we are going to cover everything with some assets. Now I can get rid of this plane, so I will delete that. And because we are using material, maybe it's a good time to switch to material view here as well. So Z, and we go to material view, and maybe in the camera view as well. And here, looking at the render view, you can see that we don't really care about those repetitions. Okay, great. And now let's bring more assets to our scene. And for that, I will first create a new collection. So right click, new collections. And here I could write decoration maybe, or assets, or whatever you want. And let's go back in the Quixel library. So here I will click on Quixel, and here I will search for snow. Let's download this one. So we do the same, download. I will go for the medium quality. Now let me show you how to import this in Blender. So after you unzip the file, you go in File, Import, FBX. You select the directory of your asset, and here you will have an FBX file. You click on it and import FBX. It will be in our decoration collection, but when you click on the asset and you go in shading, the issue we have is that it's not the correct material. If you go in render view, you can clearly see that there is something off with this material. So let's fix that. You delete this normal map, and like we did for the road, you click on the principal BSDF, Ctrl, Shift, and T, and you go in the asset directory. You will have those texture files, and like we did for the road again, you select base color, normal, roughness, and transmission, and boom, now it looks much better. It really looks like snow. Now all you have to do is to move it around and place it wherever you feel. And for that, you can use your camera view to check if it's looking good in your camera. Okay, so I will move it around here. And from there, you continue this process until you fill your entire scene. You go back in the Quixel library, you search for snow, and you repeat this process with other assets to fill your scene. Let me show you my final decoration. So here is my final version. You can see that I did use a lot of different assets. And for those little things, I also did play with their position in the ground. So here, for example, it's another one, but what I did is just move it on the Z-axis until you get this look on the road. So it gives some irregularities on the road, and this is what we want. We don't want a flat road, and I did that everywhere. And just to give you one tip, when you're happy with some decoration, you can select everything and Alt-D, not Shift-D, but Alt-D, that will spare some resources, and G and Shift-Z, and you move it on the other part just like that to fill your scene. And don't hesitate to play with the scaling of an object as well. For example, here I don't think it was that big, this mountain, but you can just press S and scale it until you're happy with the result. And then what I did is I went through the entire movie and I was checking if the image was good for not each frame, but each sequence of the movie, just to be sure that I have enough decoration everywhere. And if you're lazy like me, once again, just select a bunch of different assets like that when you already place them, and you just Alt-D and you copy again them everywhere. Okay, that's pretty much how I decorated this scene. And now we can take care of the fog. And don't worry if you don't have the same collections. I'm just using my original project. For the fog, it's super simple. You create a cube, so Shift A, Mesh, and Cube. Let's create a collection to keep things organized. I will name it fog, and I will move the cube in the fog collection here. Then you click on Object and Viewport Display. You select Wire, and you scale this cube until it covers the entire animation and a little bit more, but you don't need to go under the ground, and something like that. And at the end of the 300 frames, I still give some margin for the fog because the camera will be around here and we still want to see the fog in front of us. Now for the material, here you click on New, you delete the principal BSDF, Shift A, and we add the principal volume. We connect the volume to the volume. And to see the result, here you go in render view. And yes, it's working fine, but there is too much density. That's why it's all black. So let's lower it to 0.1, for example. And it's still too dark, so I will go for 0.02. Okay, now a final touch here in emission strength. I will put 0.01. Cool, now I like the general mood of the scene. Okay, that's it for the fog. Now let's create some snow flying around. We start by creating a new collection and right click, new collection. Let's call it flying snow. For the snow, we will use a particle system and we are going to emit from a plane. So Shift A, Mesh and Plane. I will call it flying snow emit. And we want to emit in front of the car. So let's create something big for the X 70 and for the Y 8. And 85 degrees for the X. We don't really care if it's not the correct position. And let's move it in front of the car. So G and Y. And I want to be somewhere here. And now let's parent it to the car. So you select the plane first. You shift, click on the car and Control P. Object click transform. So now the plane will move with the car. Perfect. Then in particles, you click on this little plus. We want emitter, that's right, but we want around 20,000 snowflakes. Although we start our animation at frame 25, we want the particles to start earlier, so we directly have some particles flying around at frame 25. So I will leave frame 1, and the end, let's go for 300. Lifetime, it's okay. For the normal, as I told you, we don't really care about the phase, so here, I want -20. So the snowflakes will go this way with a certain speed. For the object velocity, we want to randomize it. So let's put 10 for a more organic look. And we want some rotation. Yes, velocity here, it's okay. We can randomize it and the same here. Everything else by default. Now for the render, we have to create the objects we want to emit from this plane. So here, right click, new collection. Let's name it snowflakes. And inside, Shift A, Mesh, and UV Sphere. Let's move it on the side here. And before we shade smooth, let's go in edit mode. And to be honest with you, I have no idea on how to model a snowflake. So I just pulled some vertices around. So you click here and G, and you do the same all around here. It's not really important as it will be very small. But if you leave a perfect sphere, it will be noticeable. Just do something weird like I did. And it should be good to create at least 3 of them different. And when you finish, just right click and shade smooth. And here is the scaling that I used. So 0.046 and those ones 0.036 to have different size. Okay, that's it for the snowflake. Now we go back in the flying snow. And now for the render as, we select collection. And for the collection, we use our snowflake here, snowflakes. And for the scale, I went for 0.3 and randomness 0.2. And because we want the snow to float, here in gravity, you change it to 0.5. Now let's test the result. So play, great. We have those beautiful snowflakes flying around. And before we deal with the smoke, let's create some snow particles coming from the back wheels. We create a new collection, so new collection, and let's name it snow wheels. Shift A, mesh and plane, and we will use this plane to emit the snow. Let me rotate it first, something like that. And for the scaling, we want something small. Something like that, and let's place it so we have an idea of the size. And for the X, I think it's good enough. Okay, something like that. Let's go in edit mode. So you press tab and you select everything with A, shift D to duplicate, and X to move, and you move it around here. Now we have 2 planes. Let's rename it something original like snow wheels emit. Now we can attach those to the car. So you select those emitters, you shift click on the car, Control P, keep transform like we did before. Yes, it's working fine. Now you click on the emitters and you go in particles. You click plus to create a system for that. Emitter is good. This time we want around 4,000 particles. We start at frame 1, that's okay, and frame 300. And for the normal, this time we want a Z minus 10. We can randomize everything. For the rotation, let's randomize it as well. 0.5 for example, 0.23 and 0.2. You can play with those values if you want to test things. And here render as, we do as usual collection, and the collection is going to be the same, so it's the snowflakes. Okay, this one where we have our snowflakes. And for the scaling, let's go for 0.2 and 0.1. This time we don't need to touch the gravity, and let's see how it goes. Okay, that's good for me. When we will mix those with the smoke, I think it will look pretty good. Okay, now for the big deal, the smoke. In reality, it's not really smoke, but more snow dust coming from the wheels and the contact with the ground. So let's keep that in mind for our simulation. First, let's design the emitters. We create a new collection, so right click, new collection, and we name it smoke. This time we'll add a cylinder, so shift A, mesh, and cylinder. Let's move it around here. We'll do a 90 degrees rotation on the y-axis, and I think it's gonna be easier to place it if we are in a wireframe mode, so let's do that. Here you click on wireframe mode. I will press 3 on my numpad, that will bring me on the side, and Control and 3 to bring me on the other side. And the first thing we want to do, we want to place this little yellow dot. Let me show you that here, this dot, this one. We want to try to place it in the middle of this wheel. So G and Y, I will move it around here, and G and Z. You can hold Shift if you want to do slow movements. It doesn't have to be perfect. K and Y, maybe one more time, something like that. Now press S to scale down until you are around the wheel. It needs to be a little bit bigger than the wheel. Let me make some room here, and something like that is good enough. Now let's go from behind, so Control 1 on your numpad, and here we will try to match the wheel size from behind. So here Z, something like that. Location X here and Z again. Okay, once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Once you have this, you go in edit mode by pressing tab on your keyboard and shift D to duplicate and X to move. Here, G and X again, just to be sure. Okay, now I'm happy. I did not notice, but I have the X-ray already activated. If it's not the case, you can press on this button to activate the X-ray. That will select everything according to our selection box. So let's do that. You select here everything like that, maybe a little bit more, and you press X to delete vertices. Now when you go back in object mode, we can now go back in solid mode, and here we go. We have our emitters. Maybe let's shade smooth. So right click shade smooth, perfect. And we can rename those smoke emit. Let's parent those emitters to the car like we did before. So you select the emitters, shift, and you click on the car, Control P, keep transform. Let's check. Yep, it's working fine. From there, you select the emitters again. You go in object and quick effects and quick smoke. And normally it won't work right away. If I press play, here I have no smoke. It's because we have to change the start of the simulation. So you go in the smoke domain here, and here you see we have frame start at 1, but in reality our project is starting at 25. So let's update that to 25, and the end we want 300. Now if I test, now I have some smoke. Yay! Let's check the emitter settings first. You click on smoke emit, and I will raise this window. Okay, type flow, that's what we want. Flow type smoke, perfect. Initial temperature, we want 0.5. We don't want the smoke to rise too quickly. And is planar, yes. Surface emission, we want really to emit from the surface, so it's 1. Initial velocity, yes. We want Y, because here we want the smoke to go in the Y direction. So 10 meters per second for Y. And we want the same for Z because we want the smoke to go up as well. Okay, that's it for the emitters. Let's go for the domain. Here, the resolution divisions is for me the most important setting in this domain because it will determine the look of our smoke. The higher it is, the better it will look. But be careful, it can be very consuming and very long to calculate and to render. So we will update that later. Time scale to 1 is okay. CFL number, we want 4 because it will consume less time to calculate the simulation. For the border collisions, we want bottom. And before we tick adaptive domain, let's update our own domain. The smoke will be only visible inside the domain. So at the moment it's too small. So let's make it bigger. Here you click on the domain. For the X it's alright, but for the Y we want 13.5 meters, and for the Z 4.36. And now we want to place this domain correctly, and we don't need the domain in the ground. So let me press 1 again and let me raise it a bit, something like that. I don't need the smoke to be in front of the car, so I will move that around here. I don't want to create a domain on the entire path, so what I will do, I will attach the domain to the car as well. So you click on the domain, shift on the car, you select the car, Control P, object transform. So now if I move, okay, the domain is moving with the car. It means that we will always see the smoke in the domain, and we don't have to create a huge domain on the entire animation. Okay, now we can go back in the domain, and we want adaptive domain. It means that it will size the domain correctly according to the need of the smoke. That will improve our calculation time. For the resolution, we want to add 1 here. For the threshold, we want to go to 0.01. And for the buoyancy and density, we want to put 2 because we want the smoke to go up at a point. And for the dissolve, we want to wait before the smoke is disappearing. So we will put 20. Yes, we want some noise to give some details to the snow. And for the strength, we will lower it to 0.75. Okay, I think we have everything we need for the smoke. We can test it now. You just hit play and cool. We have our smoke. So I think this is doing exactly what we need for our simulation. The smoke is covering the camera, so I think it's pretty good. Now that we are happy with the simulation, it's time for your machine to suffer because we are going to raise the divisions. So just for your information, I use a 256 for the divisions, but I have a GTX 4090. So if you don't have a good machine, I think you should stick to 128. And this is not a normal smoke simulation we are doing. As you can see here, when I click play, the smoke is literally all over the place. So trust me, it's going to be very, very long to render. So the higher resolution you have here, and the more difficult it's going to be for your machine to render. It may even crash. Once again, we are covering the entire screen. This is not like a little bit of smoke here and there. No, it's everywhere on the screen, so it will need a lot of resources. So just to give you the entire process now, I will change the resolution to 24. Once again, this is not my final resolution. I did use 256, but it will be too long to recalculate again, so I will just use 64. Once you're happy with the resolution, you come here, you change the type to modular. Is resumable? Yes, we check this, and then we are going to bake the smoke. So you click here on bake data. Let me do that now. So it's baking the smoke on the entire project. Okay, when the baking is over, you won't see the smoke because now we need to bake the noise. So let's do that first. Bake noise. And now that the noise is baked, normally we should see the smoke. Yeah, perfect. Now we can see the smoke. And one thing before we talk about render settings, let's see now the material that we will use for the smoke. So you click on the domain, and here you will have the material of the smoke. And because we are dealing with the snow, we want a white color for the color. So you click here on color and X and 3F, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That will give us a pure white. And what I did for the density, I went for a density of 10. Now we have the correct material for the smoke, and that will look more like snow dust. Okay, now we are ready to render our project. So let's look at the render settings. So here, of course, a GPU, and I did use 2024 samples for the render with denoise. And I have an NVIDIA card, so I use optics, and of course motion blur, and I think everything else is by default. And here for the output, I already gave you the cinematic ratio here, 24 FPS, and I did use a PNG, and here are my settings if you want to copy them. Yes, that's pretty much it for the render settings. Now for the render, we will not render everything at once. First, we will render the entire scene without the flying snow, without the smoke, and without the wheels snow. Then we will render each of those elements by excluding the decoration and stuff. So it means that we will have a render for the smoke only, for the flying snow only, and for the snow wheel only. And how will you do that? Okay, so let's say we want to render the entire scene first. So what we will do, we will activate the car, yes. We will activate the decoration, so this is stuff, but it's decoration. We will activate the Raptor, of course, launch control, the fog, yes. The flying snow, no, we don't want that. The snowflakes, no, we don't want that. The snow wheels, no, we don't want that. And the smoke, no, we don't want that. And sorry, that was not the good car, this one. That was the previous car I used. So yeah, those are the elements we want to render first. So you go here and render animation. Then don't forget to change the output for the other elements. For example, now we can take care of the flying snow. So you deactivate everything here, 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 and here, and you only activate the flying snow. So it means that we will render only the flying snow. Let's be sure that in the flying snow, we don't see the emitter. So here, show emitter, we don't want that. So we will remove that for the render section. So now it means that we only have the camera, of course, and the flying snow. And you do the same for the other elements. It means that we have the different simulations on different renders, and we have the main animation on a different render as well. Okay, that's it. Let's go in DaVinci Resolve now with all the renders. And one thing I wanted to mention, we were able to do those different renders easily because everything was in the foreground, but we would have to use masks if it was not the case. Okay, now in DaVinci Resolve, you import all your renders, and they will be there in a sequence if you're using the last version of DaVinci Resolve. And let me first deactivate all this. So this is the first render we did. So the one with all the elements without all the simulations. So it looks pretty cool. And then let me deactivate that. Then we have only the flying snow here, only the snow wheels, and only the smoke. And then you can combine everything. In the bottom, you put the main animation, then you put the flying snow, then the dust, and then at the end, the smoke. And it looks like this. I think it looks pretty cool. You may have issues with the elements, and this is why we have created different renders. The cool part now is you can go here in color grading, and you can select each element. For example, here we can select the flying snow. Okay, I can see that this is the flying snow. And if you find that you don't see your flying snow enough, you can here raise this value, and you see now you have a better view of the flying snow. You can change their color, you can do whatever you want because we were able to render them separately. That I will go back to my value. Yeah, I put 122. Same for the smoke. Maybe the smoke is too dense for your taste. So what you can do, you can come here in edit. And if the smoke is too dense, you can lower the opacity. And that's the good thing when you have different renders like this. It's very easy to play with them in composition. And you do the same for the snow wheels. For the snow wheels, I went for 1.8 here because I wanted them to be visible. And you can go up a little bit more, maybe like this. Let's see. Yeah, now it's too much, but you get the idea. And then, because I had many layers, what I did, I just create an adjustment clip, and I did all my gradings on this clip. So the gradings on this clip will be applied to the other layers. And to create this adjustment clip, you come here in Effect, and you go in Effect, and you just have here the adjustment clip. You just drag it on your timeline, and you can color grade only this thing, and it has to be on top of everything. So for the grading here, let me show you my adjustment clip if I activate it. So this is without the adjustment clip, and this is with all the color grading. So for that, what I did is I added some glow here. So here is Shift Spacebar. You search for glow, and you just put the glow between those two media. And here for the glow, I went for the value of 0.05. And then for the color grading, it was pretty simple as usual. I'm just using a Film Convert. It's a plugin that you can find online. I just applied this plugin, and it adds some grains, and it adds a cool color grading by itself. So yeah, this is how I created these animations. Sorry, it was a bit long, but I had so much to share with you guys. And don't hesitate if you have questions. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.